components of that is obviously a visual, which is your logo, your fonts and your colors, which is great. Also your verbal, like the tone of voice, the way you express things, how we speak, whether we use facts and figures, whether we're jargon free or whether we like to use industry jargon. You know, how do we articulate ourselves? How do we show up? And also, what's our story? And how do we explain our narrative, both internally to ourselves, but also externally to our customers? One great tool that I like to share with people, I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but it's called archetypal branding, right? And if you're interested, I'll share a link to my book at the end, but it talks about it. And basically, in stories, there were 12 types of characters that turn up, grounded in psychology. And the work of Carl Jung, who was a psychologist, this work basically is mapped on human patterns of behavior. And so they're amplified in stories. There's 12 typical personalities or characters that we find in stories. And it can become really insightful as a brand to think about, well, when we show up in our customer's story, how are we showing up? What's our personality? How are we dressed? How are we speaking? There's lots behind this. There's the 12 on the screen, but just to give you an example, like, do we show up as a jester? In other words, really entertaining, really fun, really energetic, all about the moment, not really too serious. If we show up like that and we are trying to attract customers to us who are after a good time, then maybe that's a great thing. But if we were selling business software, like financial software, and we showed up in a jester kind of style with cartoons and jokes and fun, is that really going to be what the customer needs? The state of the buying, the mindset of the customer when they show up, is that going to be relevant to them? And the answer probably would be no. We need to think of another way of showing up in a more meaningful way. So we might show up, for example, as the sage. The sage is all about wisdom and knowledge and data, quite serious. So you can see I use this as a tool with leadership teams to begin with, and then sometimes in customer focus groups to kind of consider, well, how does this brand show up? Like, how should we show up? And once we all align around, okay, we're the rebel, we're like Harley Davidson, right? We're here to really cause trouble and to shake things up and to rebel against what we think is wrong in the world. Once you've got an idea like that in your mind, it's so easy for teams to align around behind. And, whether you're in a massive company or even a small company, I would say having an archetypal personality and knowing what that is can be a super tool for you to build out some of the other things verbally and visually and behaviorally for your brand. So a few other things. Let's go into what I'm calling the smarketing strategy, right? What on earth am I talking about there? Well, I think too many businesses, this is my view, they separate sales, how we get a customer, and the salespeople, from the marketing. How do we push ourselves out into the market? I think these two things need to be together. And so I call them smarketing. Really what we're talking about here is how do we generate new customers? How do we attract customers to our offer? And how do we sell to them? Now, I think this is an area that's changed a lot over the years. What we need to understand, remember the whole brand thing is how people perceive us, is we need to know our customers intimately. We need to understand our tribe. We need to understand as well how we're going to make them stronger. It's not about us, it's about them. If we've got a commercial strategy that says we want to turn over a certain amount of money, or we want to grow by a certain percentage, that's fantastic internally for us as leaders, or for shareholders, or depending on the size of your business, for your investors. That's great for them, but not for the customer. The customer does not care that you want to grow. The customer wants to know, how are you going to make my life better? How are you going to make me stronger? How are you going to get me to solve my problem? How are you going to help me to feel better about myself? These are the big questions. How am I going to be stronger? What do I become if I buy or join your brand? To answer those questions, we have to design that. We have to understand who we serve to start with. So this is all about understanding the customer first, what they need, their goals, their challenges, and we need to kind of help them in those things. We need to lead them through. They're not going to buy from us usually in this modern world immediately. They're going to check us out. They're going to Google us. They're going to look online. They're going to go through a consideration phase before they make a decision. So we need to really help them to kind of attract them to us. This goes back to what I was saying before about the old push model, where a company would create a product and then they would run around and push it out to the marketplace, hoping that a small percentage of the people that actually hear the message buys from them. So it becomes very pushy, very business, very salesy. And I think that way of doing business is slowly deteriorating for the reasons I've already given. But what we are really advocating, and I think the modern business needs to think about, my clients definitely do this to some success, is this, what I would call the pull model, right? So we've got to get to know our customer, and we've got to create experiences that are of value to them to pull them in. And then once we've done that and they've had a great time and we've delighted them, the customer will then promote us themselves. You know, you think of some of the, you know, the Trustpilot or on Amazon now, you know, how revolutionary that was a few years ago when they brought that out, but now how obvious it is. We all just look, what have other people said about this product? What have other people said about this experience? The customers are becoming the salespeople for the business. So we've got to look after the customer. We've got to put them at the front. Technology has put the power in their hands. And so we need to ask sort of questions like this. What is the need of the customer? And how can we create value to them from off the start? They're going to be searching on Google for you know, how to overcome their need. So we need to create content. We need to create things that show up to almost give them tips and begin to help them early in their thinking. They might not be ready to buy immediately. So we've got to think about that. And if we come across as too pushy, that's really not going to work for us. We need to manage the meaning that they attach to us. So we've got to figure out what they need. We've got to look at the value, like of our offer, and we've got to think about the proposition. We call it a value proposition. This is why this is of value to you as a customer if you come and buy from us and our brand. We've got to give them great reasons to buy, like trust and all of those sort of signals that need to come into play. We've got to answer the question why this is different to the other options that they might be considering. We've got to answer the question, why is it better than these other options? Why should they choose us? This is where I come down to, you know, when I mentioned about brand, it's about helping people make good decisions. You know, sometimes it's good to say, like, if you want this, then that over there is better for you. But if you want what we're offering, this is the reason why we're the best at that. And that's why you should choose us. But if you don't want to choose us, that's okay. Go elsewhere. That's fine. We're not desperate. You know, we're here to serve this type of people with this type of need, with these types of beliefs. The other thing that I think is important sometimes is to explain, why is it new? Why, you know, this thing that you've created, why is it new? What's the story? Where's it come from? And then finally, in terms of a marketing strategy, we need to understand, how can we reach our tribe? Like, where are they hanging out? And how can we add value to them you know, and really kind of begin to start a relationship with them on that basis. So it's not about pushing sales, advertising. That has a place, but if you don't figure out how you're helping people and really position yourself in a meaningful way to them, you're going to struggle from a brand perspective, and they're going to be turned off. Okay, a few other things. Customer strategy. What is that all about? So once we've attracted people and they've said, yeah, okay, you know, we would like to buy from you, the next thing a business really needs to take seriously is how they look after those customers, because it costs money to an investment, long-term investment, to position a brand so that people trust it and eventually come and buy it. It's not that snap decision for very many brands. It's often a long drawn out kind of process that is, you know, in that marketing process, and it has ups and downs and it goes back and forth. But once they become a customer, you don't want to then lose them, because then you've got to do that same thing again for somebody else. And it's difficult to keep growing a brand. So here's the question that you need to ask yourselves as a leadership team in a business, or as people serving businesses. How do we delight a customer after they've paid their money? You know, is it good enough anymore to go, here's the product, goodbye? I don't think so. A lot of products now, particularly tech products, they require ongoing things. Even if you sell, I've got here in the UK, when COVID hit, I've got a typical traditional butcher around the corner in the high street. And previously I might go in and buy one thing and go away. But what happened was when COVID hit, they offered a delivery service, and not only that, when I phone them up, or they can phone me, I can make a decision. We have a chat. Like, I get to know the person that I've got to know the butcher now, and so I really feel looked after by him. There's a personal connection there, and there's a process by which we look at. You can automate some of this if you need to, in terms of how you look after a customer, or you might want to think about just kind of how you set your employees up to look after their customers. Now, I always say you've got to design this, right? You can't just randomly hope that customer experience, or CX as we call it, is something that's going to happen and is going to always be positive. You need to think about the key stages that a customer goes through within your organization as they go through, from a marketing perspective, how they become aware, how they consider, how they decide to choose you. But then once they've chosen you, do you have some sort of onboarding process or introduction to you and your products? They obviously use the product. What if they've got a problem? What if they've got a complaint? How are you set up to create good customer experiences if something goes wrong? How do you create the experiences and encourage the stories for those customers to go and tell their friends and other members of their tribes to come and experience you? And also, finally, here's one that no one likes to think about, right? But if somebody wants to leave your organization or go join somewhere else, is there some sort of offboarding process that you can bring to play and design to make that as a good experience as possible? So if you unsubscribe from your product or service, what do I see? Do I get a message saying, I'm terribly sorry, here's actually some other things that might help, or could you give us your feedback, or whatever it is? And then do you respond to that feedback? These are things that could be very vital, very helpful if you're trying to manage the meaning of your business with brand thinking. Number 6, people strategy. Now, here's a thing, right? Businesses and brands, we often think of them as inanimate objects, but the truth is that all brands and all businesses, they're made up of people, right? So we often overlook how we treat our people. The point of a people strategy is to determine how we will attract, grow, and inspire our employees. And again, we need this to be really grounded in the purpose of the brand. We need to recruit people who understand and believe what we believe, that want to make the same sort of impact on the world that the brand is trying to make. So you have to have defined that first in order to get those passionate, inspirational people to join your business and not join your competitor's business. You need to stand for something so that they can make a good decision. And from that, from knowing what you stand for, you need to really think and design your culture. What's a culture? What's a business culture? Well, a business culture is kind of a micro culture, obviously within wider society, but it's like a little thing that you really meaningfully think about to encourage the right behaviors, customs, and beliefs of your people. That's what you want. You need a culture where everybody's pulling together in the same direction. So how do you create a culture? Well, like I said with the customer experience, so with the employee experience, or EX as we call it, we've got to design that. So how do we attract new people? How do we recruit them, and interview them? What are we asking them? How do we know if they're a good fit for us? Yes, they might have the right skills, but do they have the right beliefs that we need so that they can create the experiences that the customer would really respond well to? Do we do an induction into our business? Do we train our people? Do we keep reminding them of brand and brand thinking and these principles as we go through? Do we give them a day-to-day, kind of nudge as to whether or not they're being on brand or not? Do we develop them and promote them in the right ways? And also, again, when they leave, do we look after them and do we try and make that experience as positive as possible? So perhaps they would tell their friends, oh, that company, ABC, they're a great company. It wasn't right for me, but it might be right for you, kind of thing. The way that we do that, again, is through design. I would say